Hey cousin, welcome to CoCo Conjure. Here we talk about all things hoodoo, folklore, and spiritual journeys. My goal is to give foundation to the novice and inspiration to the advanced practitioner. If you have not guessed already, my name is CoCo. Cousin, if you found me, you were supposed to find me. And I'm grateful the ancestors have put me in your path. If you feel so moved, please leave a comment or follow wherever you are listening. I promise you we're going to have a good time together. As the title suggests, it's a folklore episode today. As spooky season is upon us, I've decided to dive into the more horror aspects of Black folklore. I'm talking boo hags, evil two heads, even haunted house tales. They are prevalent in Black folklore. And this isn't movie magic, no bloody and violent horror tales, though Get Out, child. You can't tell me that Get Out isn't a modern version of Black horror folklore. But no movie magic with these tales. Instead, these are like bonfire stories, or these are the stories that you tell when the electricity is out and a tempest is whipping outside and Grandma blew the candles out a while ago, but us cousins, right? Like, we're tucked in our sleeping bags on the floor and not quite ready to sleep yet. So let's sit around the fire, grab your tea or your cider, and let Coco tell you the tales that just may turn your cheeks pale. Our first story comes from Hyatt's Hoodoo, Conjuration, Witchcraft, and Rootwork. This is a true tale of an informant from Virginia who tells us a little bit about her gifts. The story goes like this. I was home in the yard one evening just about dusk, and I happened to see an old lady coming up to the house. I run in the house and I told Mama I seen Aunt Jozara. Mama said, "If you don't stop coming in here and telling me about you seeing the spirits, I'm gonna whip you." My father was quick to say, "Don't whip her. You know she was born with these spirits." They tell me when I was born, there was a cord or a caul around my face. It went under my nose and caught over my head and against my eyes. So this Saturday night, Papa went to town. Mama never did believe that I seen him. But that night, for the second time, I saw Aunt Jozara. My two brothers and myself, we was out in the yard playing. The moon was just rising, and so when I looked down the lane, I saw Aunt Jozara coming up to the lane. I said, "Lord, Harry, and Jim, here comes Aunt Jozara." So we ran in the house, all of us. Mama said, "What you see?" And I said, "Aunt Jozara." And she said, "You didn't see her." And I said, "Yes, I did. You come to the door, Mama, and you will see her." So Mama came to the door, and when she got to the door, she seen her too. So Mama quick fastened the door and put the bar across it so she couldn't get in there. Whether Aunt Jozara came inside or not, we will never know. Cousin, have you ever seen a spirit? I myself, I don't see spirits. I don't see, I don't hear, I don't taste. I don't have any of the clairs. But I do have a knowing. I bet you have that knowing too. It's that feeling that spirits are creeping up on your back. Not the guiding spirits that we call to you when we're reaching for our blessings or for protection. No. I'm talking about the spirits that make those real fine hairs on the back of your neck stand up. The ones that watch you closely as you lay in bed, preparing to rest. But when you look into the darkness, nothing's staring back at you. The spirits that are attracted to your spirit after you finish that money ritual or that home peace spell. The ones attracted to, our spiritual power. You know the ones. I can feel those. I bet you can feel those too. There is no way to destroy them, the watching spirits that wander and watch and sit and wait. They wait for their chance to go from watchers to hags. Wait for you to forget your protection work around your home. They wait for you to put on your silk bonnet and rest. And when you aren't ready for them, they breathe your air and trace their phantom fingers over your skin. And they just indulge in your essence. And once they get in, they call on their friends to breathe your air, to watch you live, and wish that they could live too. According to Hyatt's informants, the easiest way to dispel them, these watchers, after they've reached you, is to refer to the Psalms. In Volume 1, an informant says, "A spirit is something that you can't never drive away, but you can silence him. You silence him by the 23rd division of the Psalms of David, the 37th division of the Psalms of David, the 108th division of the Psalms of David. It will silence a traveling spirit. That's the spirit that comes in and goes out, many spirits. And each time when he comes in, he brings from 1 to 7 more. Now, that's how come so many people become restless and dissatisfied. It's because of evil spirits transforming back and forth. Every time you breathe, you are breathing in and out some kind of spirit. Well then, at night, you will begin to worry about his moving around. In other words, you can take holy water and sprinkle it at your door, up over your door, and over each side, and you read the 23rd Psalm of the division of David, and you will silence them. You won't have any more trouble out of them. Holy water is very good. Holy water is good to sprinkle on a person who, we would say, if they were sick or if they were afflicted some way, could sprinkle this holy water around. There's lots of times again when we say that evil spirits visit us around. This holy water keeps the evil spirits away because the holy water is supposed to be blessed by the holiest of spirits. That's pretty good advice, I think. I hope you guys wrote that down. But we have another issue. Sometimes the watchers, the monitoring spirits, they aren't your biggest problem. Sometimes you have a full-on hag issue. So let me recount the tale called Skin, Don't You Know Me? Told to Richard M. Dorson by J.D. Suggs. The story goes a little something like this. This old witch used to tantalize people out in the country. They didn't know she was a witch, but every day there'd be something missing, like diamonds, jewelry. She'd come in through a keyhole or a crack in the door. So this night she went to a big, fine castle, and a man, we'll call him Mr. John, he's just coming in from a party, about 2:30 in the morning. Everybody else is asleep, and he looked up and he saw a lady standing at this doorstep. I'm just going to stand here and see what she going to do, he says to himself. First, this lady, she reaches up and pulls her hat off and lays it down gently. Then she pulls off her shoes and she also lays them down. Then she undresses, lays the clothes all in the same heap. He's seen her hands go up and her skin begin to move upwards. Up it went, till it was about 5 feet in the air. Then it settled to the ground. Nothing else moving. Oh, that's a curious sight, Mr. John says to himself. When a lady moves off, he goes up and examines the clothes. This is old Grandma Jane's clothes. She stays over the hill. What's this doing here? Then he feels the skin. I don't know what this is, but if it's moisture, I know how I'll find out. I'll get some pepper and salt, and I'll put them on it. So Mr. John creeps back into the castle, eases into the kitchen, gets his red pepper and his salt, and sprinkles the hide good all over. Now let's see what happens next, John says to himself as he sneaks off to hide. In a few minutes, he seen the skin begin to work. Next, he heard a whistle and a voice say, "Skin, don't you know me?" The skin was so hot, Grandma Jane couldn't get back in it. 3 times he heard a whistle and a burning, and the skin sizzled, and she said, "Skin, don't you know me?" Next thing the voice said was, "If you will wash this skin with soap and water, I'll give you all the diamonds and jewelry I've stolen from you." This is Grandma Jane. He couldn't see her, but she could see him. Then he decided he would obey, and he washed it and soaped it up and even greased it good for her. And she was the same old Grandma Jane when she got back in her skin. Then she restored all the jewelry and became a poor old widowed woman. That salt had taken away all her power of witchcraft. Haints will watch you, and they will wish they were you. And hags will come at night to ride you, and they will take from you. But if you are a hoodoo, this ain't an issue. All you need is a little salt and some pepper. I know sometimes we go overboard with our 11 herbs and spices, but truly, a little salt and pepper go a long way. But besides just knowing the right fix or medicines for spiritual matters, you have to be made of tougher stuff. You have to be prepared to face the strange and the scary and the dangerous, just like Mr. John. It's also proven by this third story from Silas Athelmeyer, told to Richard Dorson. This story is called Testing to be a Two-Head. The story goes a little something like this. My stepfather told me this. He could tell them all night. His name was Frank Talbert. That was in Calhoun County. Yeah, Calhoun County. He knew this two-headed man. A man wanted to be two-headed himself. And so he went to the two-head and he offered him some money to give him knowledge and show him how to be two-headed. The two-head man, he told him, "You couldn't stand it." He said, "You couldn't stand to be made into a two-headed man. I'm telling you." But the man, he was persistent. He told him he could stand it. So the two-head sat him down by a worm fence where he leaned against it and would fall down. And when he scraped himself up, the fence would just build itself up again. And the man, he endured that all night. And all the horses in the pasture came up and neighed, and they would kick and run. And he still stood his ground. And then the wild foxes came, many of them in that section, and barked and barked. But the man still stood, determined to be two-headed. Next, a large rattlesnake came and crawled through the fence where he was and shook his rattles, striking at him as he passed. The man got out of the way. Now this was the two-head sending him all these tests, And next, all the worm fences, they started to surround him and build themselves up. And he would fall and they would build themselves up and close in on him. And the man just got scared. And he ran and went back to his house. The two-head told him he couldn't be a two-headed man because he couldn't stand all the tests and all the trials that was put on him. Some say hoodoo doesn't require initiation. I say the initiation of a hoodoo is a test of character, of worthiness. Sometimes it's dealt by an elder, but for those of us not born into it, but find ourselves called to it, it's definitely dealt by life. So tell me, cousin, do you have what it takes to be a two-head? When life deals you haints and hags and horrors, will you reach into your bag of tricks and rise to the occasion? Or you let life fill your belly with lizards and your brains with worms, Will you let the horses kick you, and will you let the rattlesnakes bite you as you stand frozen in the midst of adversity? All right. That's enough campfire for one day. We've reached the part of the episode where I root around the internet and try to answer a question posed by its denizens. Last week, when we were talking about graveyard work, I had 2 questions, but I only read one because I felt like it was running a little long for us. So this one is the second question posed. It says, does graveyard dirt have to be from a grave, or can you just get it from the graveyard in general? Their family is visiting and planning on going to a cemetery, and they just want to know, just to be sure. So last episode, I talked about how there's certain protocol to follow going to a graveyard, at least certain protocol that I follow when I go into a graveyard or a cemetery, because those aren't the same. A graveyard is attached to a holy building like a church. A cemetery is just like this mass park where people are laid to rest. Regardless, it's this. I follow the same protocol. So if you get graveyard dirt from the graveyard in general, you are gathering the dirt from the spirits there, like from the guardian spirits there. For me, as a hoodoo who is not theistic in any way, those are the earthly spirits bound to that place. So we're talking dirt from trees or near trees. We're talking dirt from maybe bush hedges, things like that. Or not necessarily dirt. You may even get a red brick from there. If there's a building made from red brick, you might gather your red brick dust there as well. And that's definitely helpful if you would like the spirit of that graveyard, the spirit cultivated in that graveyard, to aid you in your work, assuming that you've done all of the prerequisites of going to that graveyard, communing with those spirits, those guardian spirits, of putting yourself out there and doing some sort of divination to see if you were heard, and if your answer of whether you can take from that place was yes or no. So like there's some prerequisites. If you want more detail into those prerequisites, go back 1 episode. But yeah, you can do that. But you can also leave things there the same way. So if you want to give someone over to the graveyard spirits, you could write their name on paper and bury it at the base of a tree. Hopefully your paper is one that's like compostable, meaning like if you write on it, it will decay. So you're not littering in the graveyard. That would be horrible. So yeah, you can do that, sure. But if you want targeted work, if you want work that, and you want to make sure that the work is done a very particular way, you want to take it from a grave. So you may take it from a judge or a lawyer for like justice work. You may take the grave from someone who is kind of rich if you want to do some wealth work. If you know of a person, like a family member, and you want to leave it at their grave, or take from their grave, that's very personal, that's ancestral, an ancestral tie that may help you, as I explained in the previous episode. So there's definitely 2 ways to go about it. I will say this: if you are contemplating whether or not you want to take graveyard dirt or cemetery dirt or whatever, from a grave from one of the trees or one of the guiding spirits, as opposed to an actual grave, because you're afraid of taking from the grave, you don't belong in that graveyard or that cemetery. You need to test your mettle a little bit more. Seriously. You need to study a little bit longer. You need to be a little more sure in your steps before you take. Because as long as you follow protocol, as long as you are respectful. The graveyard is not a scary place. It's not a place of horrors, right? It's a place of power. No different from a church, or if you get dirt from a bank. Like, it's a place of power. And so it should not scare you to go into this place of power, as long as you respect it for what it is. I will say that if you take from a grave, in this person's instance, I would not take from a grave unless it was from someone I know or I knew a lot when they were alive. Because if you're just going for a visit and it's a one-off, and you don't know who was buried there, how they died, what they were like in real life, even just like a little bit of that, then you run the risk of taking something that you want no parts of. And so, and you are disturbing the rest of someone who you don't know, right? Like, you're disturbing their place of rest. I believe that the ground remembers. I believe the earth remembers. So whatever we did in our life, whatever we were holding on to when we passed, it goes back into the earth when we die. And so I don't take from a grave that I don't have an understanding of who that person was. Like, I won't do it. So in this instance, this person, this cousin, might be better served if they commune with the spirit of the graveyard and take from a tree, or specifically to try to find a tree close to the center of the graveyard. That might do them better. Okay, next question. This question comes from Facebook. It says, is there anything I can do to remove the fear I have of seeing spirits? Wow. Okay, so I'm not someone who sees spirits. I definitely do. Like I said, I have the knowing, and I know when I'm being watched, or like I've attracted something. So I can only speak from my experience and my personal gnosis here. So one of the ways I taught myself to not be afraid is to remind myself that I hold power. These spirits do not have power over me. I hold power. And nothing can come in and out of my home. Nothing can disrupt my mind unless I allow it to do so, because I am a hoodoo. I am a person of conjure and magic. And they shall not pass if I don't want it so. And if I'm caught slipping up and they do pass into my space, or I get that creepy feeling, then I remind myself that I know how to dispel. I know how to send them back from where they came from. I know how to push them out of my space. There's no need to be afraid of something if you... fear comes from lack of control. It comes from uncertainty and lack of control. If you can mitigate that, if you can minimize the uncertainty, and if you can build your own magic and you have some sort of control in the situation, the fear will dissipate. It'll go away. Yeah, that's my answer to that. Okay. You've made it to the end of the podcast. Thank you for staying with me this long. Before I end this, there's two things I want to remind you of. First, very mundane. We are coming close to the 2024 election. And this is not magical. I just want to remind you that our ancestors, both of root and of blood, fought very hard for you to have the right to vote. I want to remind you of that. If you are a black woman, which most of you are, by the demographics, most of you are black women. If you are a black woman like myself, if you are just not a straight white man with money, if you're anything other than a straight white man with money, then your right to vote came with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And there was a point in America where the Constitution said we were all free and we all had rights, and we didn't. But we do now. We can exercise that right. And our power to exercise that right scares the living bejesus out of at least half of this country. So I would like to remind you that you should exercise that right to vote. I will not tell you who to vote for. I will simply tell you, remind you, bequeath you the knowledge, the reminder, I should say, that you need to vote. Okay. It's not too late. Go online, get a sample ballot for your state, for your county, because that ballot doesn't just have the presidential race on it. It also has your state things coming up. It also has local ordinances on there. Like, familiarize yourself with the issues, familiarize yourself with what's going to be asked. Fill it out before you go. And then when you go, you can take your little, pre-filled out sample ballot, and you can just copy the bubbles over, and you've already thought it through. You don't have to stand there and worry. Whoever you vote for, however you're registered to vote, I would like to remind you to vote. Please. Do what our ancestors could not. Okay, that's number one. Number two, speaking of the ancestors, I would like to remind you of some important days coming up. If you follow pagan traditions, then you know that Halloween or Samhain is upon us very soon. Or if you are from Latin America, Day of the Dead is almost here as well. I think most importantly to Hoodoo, All Saint Day is coming up. All Saints Day is celebrated by at least some of the Hoodoos here in Baltimore, but I would really hope that across the country, All Saints Day is recognized, not as a Christian holiday, but as a holiday of ancestral veneration. One of the things that all three of those celebrations have in common, Samhain, the Day of the Dead, All Saints Day, is that they are celebrations of the spirit of death and its place in the life we live today. And it gives honor to the ancestors that marched before us, so that way we could live well, right? So if you are listening to this, I'm sure you see the benefits and the joy that comes from acknowledging ancestral spirits that fuels our magic. And we talk so much about spirit, capital S, in Hoodoo, that sometimes we overlook death and its place in that cycle in our life, and how important it is, right, that things come to an end. And that we only have ancestors because they lived, left a legacy, and passed, right? So just like how spirit is important, death is important in our practice. So I hope you get a chance to go outside and visit your beloved dead, or take a meditative stroll through the cemetery, or surround yourself with like-minded individuals to celebrate the ancestors that came before us and their blessings in our lives. Before we go, cousin, I just want to let you know, you deserve the world. There's no hate, no hag, worm fence, kicking horse that will stop you from reaching your magical potential. You have everything you need. You have ancestors looking out for you. And if you call for your blessings, cousin, they will come to you. I'll see you guys next time.